Welcome back, everyone. We are so excited to finish this day, this afternoon of the 10-15-year reunion off in style with an amazing panel, hopefully an intense and at times maybe even controversial discussion. You just heard from our voice of God, Anna Patterson, who our panelists are, so I will skip the introduction, or maybe to say it better, I will leave the introductions up to them. You can see them here. I'm very excited to have this panel together with us. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time. Thank you, Janina, for joining us from Germany. Before we start diving into the topics, and we have a lot to cover, I have 4 pages in my horrible handwriting of questions prepared, and there will be many coming, hopefully, from you. At this point, please use the Slido chat to ask questions, to use this opportunity to get your questions to the panelists. We have a 15-year, a 10-year reunion. We are celebrating those that graduated in 2006 or 2011. If you guys think back, and I would like to ask each and every one of you this question, where were you in your career in 2006, 15 years ago? At what point? Give us a short anecdote, a short idea of where you were. And Janina, maybe you can start. Where were you in 2006 in your career?
Well, in my career, I was running a team, but I was a brand new mother. And so I was like in the middle of juggling twins and breastfeeding and doing management meetings. So 2006 was like the year of a lot of changes in my life and understanding that I don't really matter at all.
Jochen, I'm hoping not breastfeeding, but where were you in 2006?
In 2006, I worked for Deutsche Telekom, the IT segment. Just started my management career there, from sales to being responsible for corporate customers, a manager. And my kids were 2 and 4 years old at this point in time.
Timea, same question, 2006.
Yeah, 2006 was a kind of a milestone, I can say, in my life, because I started the executive MBA in that year, and I started my job in Slovnaft, where I've been since that time. And it sounds terrible, but this is the case. And I didn't have a child, so this is something where I was a young female without really too many obligations. But the journey started, I think, in 2006 when the express train really started the journey for me.
And last but not least, Barbara, where were you in 2006? What do you remember?
Yeah, mother of a 4 and a 1-year-old. At turbulent times at home, but in terms of my career, I took the second step in executive education. So I've been working with executive groups then, and I started to get ready to take over the professional MBA marketing and sales as an academic director and bring my baby, the program, to life. So some of the alumni are here with us today as well.
We divided this event in 3 sort of phases, steps, reflecting the past, navigating the present, and shaping the future. And sticking a bit with the past and maybe shortening the period to make it a bit easier for you to 10 years to the last decade. If you look at leadership and the organizations we're trying to build, and all of you have experiences in large organizations, what's the change in the last decade that you've seen that's most relevant, most accentuated, that you think is most important when we try to understand what leadership was before? Barbara, maybe starting with you. What's changed in leadership in the last 10 years?
That's a very big question. Let me take a start to answer
We're here to answer big questions.
Well, from my perspective, I think what we have realized over the last 10 years is something that has helped us over the last year, and that constant is the only, or change is the only constant. Yeah. So basically, thinking of the different crisis situations that we had on a global scale, managing and coming out of that, and you know, the last year, of course, is very strong in our mind. Right now, I think leadership has more than ever been in constant crisis mode and managing the crisis. Speed is increasing, and I think this is very demanding for leaders, and it keeps being demanding for leaders. Yeah. So I think it's the speed, it's the sequence of challenges that we see coming in the last 10 years. That, you know, and I'm leading an organization with around 70 people. Leading a big multinational corporation or taking a leadership role there is even more demanding, I would guess. Yeah. So small or big, I think that's what I would say.
Janina, going to you. You had a lot of time to reflect during the writing process for your book, and I think leadership was a big part of that. If you look back at the last 10 years, and half of that, more or less, was spent in the board of Siemens globally as Chief Human Resources Officer, what's the leadership change you've seen that was most relevant when you think back at the last decade?
I would definitely, underline what Barbara has been saying. I honestly would also think that what we now see as very relevant factors for leadership is not that we shouldn't have seen that 10 or 15 years ago. Leadership is always about engaging people. It's always about running a team. It's not only about functional skills, but we also know that a lot of organizations are promoting people because they're good in whatever they do, right? In their functional skills, be it finance, be it engineering or whatever. But they're not always good in managing people. And I think what the pandemic has shown, that if there was not a connection and empathy between the managers and their employees get lost. And also what is very clear, the engagement level of employees is totally and solely depending on their own and direct manager. So they join an organization because they think an organization is great, but at the very end, it's their direct boss that makes the difference. So I believe we have to become much better in training people, because unfortunately, it's only 10% of the population that is born that is an automatic natural leader. 20% can learn it. So we have to invest that we really find and invest in those 20%, and the others that are in management positions but don't have the skills. By the way, mostly they don't enjoy it either. They cannot be in important management or leadership positions because otherwise we will lose the workforce. So I think this is going to be the struggle of the future.
I forgot something in my introduction, which is now coming to my mind, that if you're wondering why these guys are sitting less than 1 meter away from each other, we checked everyone's either vaccinations or the test results. So leadership is also about being role models. We're trying to be very cautious here, but just so we get a shot where not everyone is only half in the picture, we decided for this setup, but everyone here is negative when it comes to COVID, and Janina is safe in Germany, so we made sure of that.
In my own room.
In your own room, hopefully tested. We have one similarity between you, Janina, and Jochen. You both recently wrote a book, Jochen, going from the last decade to the last 10 months. You wrote a book about hybrid working, I think, right, together with 2 colleagues, and you never saw each other during the entire process, only virtually.
Virtually. Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us a bit about the lessons you've, during the writing of the book, but also you yourself in your role at Kapsch, have made in the last 15 months. What was most relevant, and what were the topics you tackled in your book?
Yeah, you mentioned it. We wrote it completely virtually. We haven't met each other.
But give us a picture of what that means. You met via Zoom and talked, and then you wrote, and then you met via Zoom and wrote, and it sounds counterintuitive.
Yeah, right. First, we were three more or less friends. We knew each other already, which makes it much easier, of course. And this is something that of course helps if you know each other in advance. Then we all experienced the change during this crisis and said, okay, let's try to summarize our experience. One colleague is from KPMG, an advisor, and the other is from a university, having more a theoretical view on it, and we decided just to do it virtually, meaning, yes, we had Zoom calls mainly during the weekends because we had a lot to do during the week. Kapsch is in the area of IT and digitization, so we were 7/24 busy during this crisis. So we used the weekend more or less because vacation and holidays were not able to go to holidays. So we said, okay, what to do in weekends, and we decided just to write a book.
Yeah. Why not?
That was the main reason. It was a little bit more difficult because we were not just 3 persons who wrote the book. We said, okay, let's also ask our customers and partners about their experience during this time. So we invited 10 board members of Austrian large corporations also to give us their point of view. And so in total, we were 3 authors and 10 guests who just summarized the experience. And let me comment a little bit also on your question before concerning leadership, which is also part of the book. One is leadership, the other is, let's say, technology. Another one is what's the effect on the production area, what's the effect on the HR, so we looked at different departments because this change affected the whole company, all processes, all units. And if you look at leadership, what we experience, of course, during the last months and also years, is that the hierarchy is getting less and less important. Yeah, it's more trust-based. It's more about empathy, as mentioned before, and it's also more about output orientation instead of input monitoring. And if you use this leadership styles, then it's possible to work in a hybrid way or in a remote way, because if you're not trusting your people, if you don't show the empathy, if you're not output oriented, it's impossible to work on a virtual basis. So this is also part of the book. What are the changes in the leadership style and what will last and what's a one-time effect perhaps? Yeah.
Can I jump in here, Klaus?
Sure, please.
And I fully agree to what you said. It's more about output and not about input control. But I think for at least most of the knowledge workers, right, if you're on a production, you can see output, you can measure output, or if you're working in a service center. But also in the office space with knowledge workers, it was always about measuring the output. And if someone does the same job in 5 hours and not in 8 hours, so it's good. I think always like say, it's like, if you're so quick and quicker than I ever would expect, go home and do something nice. But the fact is, those managers always wanted people to be present because then they thought they could control the input. But personally, I think that never worked. It was just like a false illusion that by seeing people being present in the office, you could be better in measuring the output. What the COVID pandemic has shown, that you cannot rely on it. But I think the results were not really different. I mean, those that produced good results would produce good results anywhere, and those that were maybe not bringing the performance were not bringing the performance either by sitting in the office.
Timea, we touched upon it before already, but maybe to those who tuned in now, we broadened the audience a bit. Last 10 months, last 15 months, navigating the uncertain times, I think we called your keynote. What was for you in your leadership role most important in navigating this COVID pandemic?
Well, it was a very tough time because really running a petrol station network and somehow to be there for the customers, and even though there was a very limited mobility, it really created lots of tension, and there was the state regulations which were under constant changes. It was something which was really creating tension in the work. But I think that the biggest learning from that period is that have to be quick in decisions and have to somehow make a different priority when you are not really talking about the financial terms and the results, but mainly about the humanity, about the protection of the lives. And this really, created a completely different understanding of your business, what you are running, how you talk to your people, your staff who are at the service stations or petrol stations, really at a high risk, and how you communicate towards the customers because there is a low mobility, and what you communicate towards the customers. So it was a completely change of mindset and cultural change for us, definitely.
We also listening to your answers and Janina, part of your speech also, we hear a lot about trust and empathy and humanity, and unfortunately journalists are skeptical by nature, so I have to take this role of to ask really if this is all true, if we are leading with more empathy, if we're leading with more trust, if we're leading with more humanity, then why do we have the problems we have? I mean, we have large problems to tackle, and I'm not saying COVID happened because of our leadership styles, but there is something there that's not clicking. There's something there that's not happening. There's something there that's not missing. Maybe Janina, posing the question to you. If all of this is true, if we're so trusting and empathetic, why do the boardrooms that we have still look the same way as they did 40 years ago? What's your answer to this?
Oh, this is a very difficult question. Trying to be short, I would say, because it's sociology, because we're all human beings. And there is something that is called the Similarity Effect, or it's also called the mini-me effect. Like, the first methodologies and research results were there in the 70s. It's people like to choose people that are just like them, that look like us, that act like us, that have the same education. And most of those positions are run by heterosexual, white, at least in the Western world, by white men. And so they also have the tendency to believe that they actually have to surround themselves with exactly people like them. And this is not because they're mean or because this is a bad choice. You could go into a very typical female environment, you would see exactly the same reaction on the other hand, right? But it's just because our brain is not so good to get over those unconscious beliefs that we have. And I am pretty radical in that effect. I think it's like it has shown for decades, and you see a few organizations that have a completely different understanding, but most organizations don't. But by introducing, for example, quota, you can broaden the horizon of where you look for people, what you believe could be the right standard, and then finally you see that it could be any human being doing the same job in the right, or with the right skills, or with the right qualification, with the same results. But sometimes it needs to prove, and I think you can also see some of the political debates. I mean, for example, in Germany, like there is one nominee of the Green Party is I think she's 40, Annalena Baerbock, I think she's 40. She was like chosen to be the chancellor candidate. Germany has had a chancellor, a female one, for 16 years. And now the debate is, or in the beginning was, I mean, she's only 40 and she has 2 small kids. And I'm thinking, why would that matter to any qualification? But it's the pictures that need to change. And here we can see that human beings don't want to change easily, and especially those with privilege don't want to give up their privilege. So that's how I would see it.
Barbara, same question, but posing it different, or maybe tying it into what you're seeing students ask of WU Executive Academy when it comes to leadership. Do you see this changing in the last 10 years, and what are you doing to change the landscape of leadership or the faces we see in leadership positions?
Okay, let me just take a step back and answer or come back with my answer to your question. And I'm not a journalist, I'm an educator, and that makes me an optimist
Can be
to start
optimistic,
with.
that's good.
Because if I would not believe that there is no change possible, then I think I would not be in the right position or in the right job. I think when we look at leadership right now, and you said you're missing all those qualities, those human qualities, then probably it's also worth looking at where these leaders of today come from and when they have started their careers, probably around 20 years ago, and think about what was important then and what self-reinforced that system so that they reach those positions where they are right now. Yeah? And then probably those qualities that you mentioned were probably not in the job descriptions or in the job adverts and so on. Coming to your second question, what are we doing? I think this is where we take our responsibility very seriously and say, what does the world need in terms of leaders of today and tomorrow? So we are exactly at that point to say, what do we want to see together with our students and alumni in that world? And responsible leadership is a very important part of the curricula in different shapes and forms. Yeah? And I think this would be my hope and my strong aspiration and my true belief that we will be able to manage that and that we see different leadership styles. Yeah. And I think we're also, talking about black and white here. Yeah, I think you have very good role models as leaders who are following those qualities, those values, instill that in their companies. But we still have probably too many who don't. Yeah, and that's we need to reach a tipping point there. And I think executive education can do that. Yeah, why do people come to us? Because they want to move forward, not only in their career but also in the way how they lead people. And I think this is they're open to that. They come with those aspirations, and that's where we hope to make a difference.
Jochen, to pick up a point in your book. And both Timea said it before that to set an example, you left at 5 just to show that there's other things apart from work that are happening. And I think, Janina, you describe a similar situation in your book where there was no appointment to be had with you between 5 and 8 or so because you had to pick up your kids. But Jochen, asking you, we see, or at least the discussion is that physical office spaces will not vanish but lose relevance. We will go into a hybrid model, I'm guessing that's also why you wrote the book, because it's a relevant topic. But how do you think this setting an example, being a good role model, changes when you don't see your employees every day? Maybe only twice a week, maybe only once a week, maybe never, because you go fully remote. What's the leader's role in reaching your employees if they're spread through their homes and not the office?
Let me give you an also a short answer to your first question that you raised before, and then embed the smart office concept, that how office will change. How was the impact of leadership? I think we have no alternative as leaders. Yeah, we are more or less forced to change, especially in the industry where we're in, and we're the largest Austrian IT company. To get the best people, we have to give and provide the best environment for them. We have to attract them, give them the possibility to grow within the company. So more or less, it's not just a question if we want to change. More or less, it's a question that not even a question. It's a prerequisite that we have to change to attract and to keep the best people. And that's more or less, especially in my industry, the main asset, to have the best technicians and to convince the customers that we have the best solution for them. So there's an effect that pushes us to change. Yeah, and I think this effect accelerated already during the pandemic. If we talk to our customers, and I said 10 of the top board members of Austria also gave us their experience, they said that the crisis accelerated their initiatives by 5 to 10 years. They leapfrogged more or less the normal development in terms of leadership, in terms of how to use the digital tools in collaborating, in terms of thinking about smart office concept. Because if you look a little bit in the future, in 98% of all the meetings, we will have at least one virtual participant. So there will be a hybrid environment. And to attract the best people, it's clear that you cannot force them to come to the office. So we have to change, we must change, and we have to change. And what will be the impact on the smart office concept, and what will be the impact on leadership? I mean, we see in the studies that the office spaces will be reduced by 20 to 30%. But new spaces will be created. We will come to the office to have a social meeting, to have creativity sessions, and also we in our company say that we want that our employees will have an experience when they come to the office. Yeah, we will create new areas, cafeterias and things like this. Yeah, and to more or less also offer them a place for social meetings. What does this mean for leaders? It will be, if you do not see them, if you cannot feel them, and you are very often in remote contact, it will be even more difficult to show empathy, to get the feeling how they are doing. Are they fine? Are they depressed? Yeah. What are the feelings? What's the private environment? So it gets more and more important to stay more often in contact with them. Yeah, and the leadership style will definitely change. And I think personally that the 100 remote collaboration will be very difficult. I think that we will end up in a hybrid model, and we are more or less faced to offer us also to our employees such hybrid models to attract the best people.
Timea, we also touched upon this. It's very much a knowledge worker discussion, right? I mean, you are in an industrial company, Janina has some experience in an industrial company. How are you making sure that all of this, what we're talking about, home office and working from home and working from Bali or wherever people are trying to work, there are some people that cannot choose, and you have these conflicts within one company, within one division maybe even. How can you bring together people that are physically on site and people that can work from everywhere, and how are you making sure that the ones aren't left behind while the others get all the privileges?
Well, it's a very difficult question, and I think that all those companies who do have a blue collar and the white collar segment, they are really struggling with this topic, because you cannot really, I mean, you should equally treat your employees. On the other hand, you cannot really do it in this kind of pandemic or COVID situation, because of the simple fact that the production unfortunately doesn't really go without human touch, and also the white collars really can do and provide the job from their homes, and therefore it's very difficult difficult to really balance this topic, and even to negotiate with trade unions how you are going to deal with this topic. This really created, I do believe, tensions for us, for managers, and that's why in our company we decided that the managers should come back to work as soon as possible. So we were really for a very limited time of the year or of this period working from home offices, because the management visibility was quite a key, that the workers and all the people can really see us, that we are not really leaving them behind or putting them at risk, but we are part of this, and we really walk the talk, and we are there with them. So this was a very relevant topic which we discussed. And on the other hand, I cannot agree more on what you said, because this new normal is definitely pushing us to accept differences, and even at the same workplace you need to treat differently certain part of the workers or certain part of the employees. On the other hand, what you said, that this kind of external or home office type of work and virtual teams and how you are going to sense and create this empathy type of leadership, because this has to be a part of the job. Maybe it will create more positions for women, because women do have sensors, and we can really sense it much more, that what's going on behind the screen and even behind the curtains, and this is something which is a new kind of leadership skill which we all need to learn, and we need to have and use all the sensors which we have. So it's a tough question.
Janina, you're not at Siemens anymore now, but anything to add on the conflict that's maybe brewing in industrial companies where white and blue collar workers have very different views on this pandemic and the changes?
Yeah, I understand the challenges, and I think there is no standard answer, because I think it depends on every company, and by the way, sometimes really on the size. I would refrain a little bit, like I understand from how you also described it, Timea, that you at the times of pandemic you asked the managers to come back, but there has always been a difference between white collar and blue collar. There has been a lot of differences when it comes to payment, to the type of work, and to flexibility. There can be flexibility for production workers when you say it's like they can choose shifts, and that has been a long time possible, and a lot of organizations have been doing that. I would rather suggest to look at the type of work that, for example, are happening in the production and the service phase. If there is, it depends a little bit again here on the way, if there is a lot of worry sometimes that they cannot keep up with the upskilling and the reskilling for whatever comes in the future. And then it's easy to also say we make more investments in the skilling of a certain group of people compared to another. So I would look for more different bonus, or like, how should I say, like, the pros, instead of like saying it's like we all have to become equal, because it is a fairy tale that there has been. I understand what you say to me, and I agree that you have to treat people equally and employees equally, but on the same hand side, different jobs have different requirements. And so I would rather go to say, what is the flexibility? And let me also make one comment, I think, is what Barbara has said is like 20 years ago, certain behaviors were not asked specifically from managers that are asked today, or from leaders. I, by the way, am not convinced that women per se are the better managers or leaders. If I would go into the stereotype of employees, I would see there is more typical female behavior. But when I look at the category of people that are working up their ladder and have reached certain hierarchical positions, also because they have learned to play the game that Barbara was mentioned a little bit, like they have played to learn the rules. I would not say that women are automatically better, but I would definitely encourage that people can bring in something that is maybe that they were hiding before, like empathy and like showing emotions, that they can bring it to the job independent of their gender. That's how I would see it. But again, here, I think it also very much depends on the company culture.
Shifting slowly but surely from navigating the present to shaping the future, there was a recent article in Harvard Business Review which listed 6 leadership paradoxes for the post-pandemic era. And I can go through them quickly, and everyone who's in a leadership position probably sees a little bit of their experiences in this. It's a strategic executor, the humble hero, the tech-savvy humanist, the traditional innovator, the high-integrity politician, and the globally minded localist. In German, you would say we're looking for the eierlegende Wollmilchsau. And leaders are very much remunerated in a way to make up at least for a lot of these expectations. But we have to make sure that they don't get unrealistic, Barbara. What are you seeing that the benchmark we're setting for people in leadership positions is getting unrealistic?
Well, I feel that the pressure, and when I talk to students and alumni, I feel that the pressure is extremely high. Yeah, and as you mentioned, this animal that nobody has seen before, this eierlegende Wollmilchsau, it doesn't seem to exist. Yeah, so the question is there one human that really can combine all these traits and characteristics? And probably it's a relief to say no, there is no such person. So which of those areas do I as a leader cover well, and where do I feel comfortable and strengthen those? Yeah, and we're talking about teams and team diversity, also in leadership. So why do you have to be all in one person? You try to be strong at what you are strong and bring that to the table, and then find like-minded collaborators on that. I think that would be much more along the lines of what I would find timely and realistic. Yeah. Otherwise, I think the pressure is just simply too high. Yeah.
Jochen, going through these 6 characteristics, are you seeing some of that from your own experiences, or maybe you touched upon in writing your book? Are we expecting too much from our leaders, from our leadership positions?
Yeah, if we looked at this different kind of leadership, the 6 different leadership styles, to be honest, I like the most I think it's called humble hero.
Humble hero, yes.
Yeah, meaning to be a hero in the sense of finding bold decisions. I think this was important, especially in the first phase of the pandemic, to show presence as a leader, to give some kind of guidance in a phase of uncertainty. But on the other hand, also to be able to listen, to learn, to ask others, and to involve others. So I think this perhaps a little bit conflicting characteristics are, for me, is the most interesting paradoxon. And what's my experience in the last months? Yeah, I think one characteristic that you have to bring as a leader is to be adaptive. I think it's not one leadership style where you can say that's a one size fits all. You really have to be adaptive. And again, as mentioned, therefore I liked this humble hero the most. Is in the first phase we are 2 persons in the board, my colleague and myself, and we showed presence. Yeah, and really tried to keep contact with our whole team, in the sense of, for instance, in former times we made a board video with professional cameras and so on once a month to tell a little bit about what's happening. And what we did in the first phase, we just made videos with our Apple phones. Yeah, and we just distributed to the whole team and showed what happened. And just to give an example, I mentioned it before, we were short of masks in Austria, and a friend of us just had the idea in Vorarlberg to produce a medicine mask and ask us during the weekend to write the software for the logistics, because they're not able to distribute it. And on Sunday we started with my team to write the software, and on Tuesday we were able to distribute the first mask to the hospitals. And these are examples that we also communicated to the team to say, hey, look, let's we are together. Let's show solidarity and really short-term communication, and also communicating positive things in a phase of uncertainty. So showing presence was, at this point in time, I think, one of the most important characteristics. But few months later, it was necessary to show other characteristics as a leader. So you have to be, the main point for me is have to be extremely adaptive as a leader.
When I remember in the first interview we did, Janina, I think it was almost 3 years ago now, you said that it's not about either or anymore. You know, it's not mutually exclusive. If you look through these, obviously, you know, placative statements, humble hero, tech-savvy humanist, Do you feel that leaders need to combine the two, or can they say, I'm just not that person, look for someone else? How should we manage this?
First thing is like a leader. What is a leader in difference to a manager? So I think we have to see that not everyone who is responsible for a team is automatically also a leader, and all of those behaviors are expected. But I am very much there with Barbara. It is about completing your team with those that are completing you. We cannot be everything. And I think the important thing is like saying, this is where I'm good at, and this is where I'm not good at, and this is why someone else in the team is taking over that role or is consulting me. And I think also being open to say, hey, I'm not good in everything, because we're all human beings. In reality, it's hubris to believe, and there's a lot of people that actually suffer from hubris, but in reality, they are not. And I think this is more than trying to achieve to become something. I am very much a believer in your own strength, because if you invest in your own strengths, you become like X hundred times better than if you invest in your weaknesses. Not investing in your weaknesses, I mean, in terms of like, of course, there's always a non-acceptable behavior, but I believe much more in completion than in trying to work on something that you're simply not good at.
I posed this question before to Timea, but I would like to ask everyone on panel now. If you have to think of a role model of someone that inspires you, can be a soccer player or a manager or a parent or a relative, whatever. Who comes to mind, Jochen?
My kids.
Your kids are your role models?
Yeah.
What way?
Yeah, in the sense of always learning new things, always questioning things, and I think one of the most. I don't know if it's not if this is aligned with you, but one point is always for me to learn to unlearn. Yeah. I mean, the world is changing. We're in a transition, a transformation. We have to question everything that we did in the past, and therefore my kids are my role model. Yeah.
Barbara, role model.
Actually, a role model, I think, is not a term that I would use necessarily, but what inspires me, are people from different walks of life. Very often the students and alumni. So one of the privileges in my job is that I get to meet so many interesting people. Yeah, and I'm interested in the stories of those people and what they had to go through, what they managed, how they arrived where they are today, and that's cutting across many people I meet, not only the students and alumni, it's also my bachelor students, how they think at the age of 20, 25. They are a source of inspiration.
Sorry to interrupt here, but what are you seeing when you look at the things that matter to your bachelor students when they're 20, 21 versus the things that matter to your executive students, the ones that go through Executive Academy? I'm sorry to catch you off guard,
no.
but what are you seeing? Because we're talking about stronger tomorrow, and the ones that are coming will shape this future. What are you seeing in terms of what they really value and what's important to them?
Well, what I usually compare is probably not so much the Executive Academy students or alumni, but myself in that when I was young at that age, and what was basically what were my values, what did I want to aspire in my career, and I see big differences there. Yeah, so it's career is not the only thing. It's making the world a better place. It's values that are different from the ones that we were taught 20 years. It is a certain naivety. I can realize that at my age, obviously, but I'm pretty positive that the next generation has a different mindset. Yeah, they're growing up much more global, much more open. At least the people I work with, and I think that's what inspires me. And they're driven and determined and want to make it a better place, the world a better place. Yeah, I might be still around to see what happens in 20 years. So the proof is in the pudding, but I'm very confident about that. And not role model, but a big source of inspiration is a person that you might have heard of, Viktor Frankl, whose books I read whenever times get tough, because he has survived and managed to go through an experience surviving concentration camp in World War II, still keeping up a positive attitude where the outcome was completely unsure. So when I read what he has to say, my problems really shrink by the minute.
Timea, incorporating Barbara's change, what inspires you? Who inspires you?
Well, as I said earlier, I couldn't really define one single person who could really be the one to be named and as a role model. I think that, as Barbara said, I can really agree with that there are so many stories and so many information which can inspire you in different way. One of the bosses, he's still a very good strategic thinker, and how he could connect the dots, it really inspires me. But on the other hand, there are many other different stories which, if you listen to a coach or a mentor, speeches, or if I look at my mom, and she's one of my definitely one of my example who I would like to be one day. And I'm struggling with that, but there are different stories and different occasions, and probably I am in different stage in my life, and a different story can inspire me in different way. And this is something which even you listen to a story at once you are up and once you are down, you get it from a completely different angle, and different messages you take away from the story. So this is something which really counts in my life as well.
Janina, role model, source of inspiration, who comes to mind?
I also always say there is not a single person. I'm always admiring people that are courageous, that go beyond maybe what was expected by them, and they do also things that might be risky for them, risky in terms of ensuring their own position, and all of that. This is people that are inspiring me. And again, here, I really did not speak with Barbara about everything beforehand, but I also always say is when I'm thinking that I'm stuck, and when I think that there is no progress, then I look at people that are much older than me, and then I look at what they were stuck with and what their hurdles were. And then I believe, okay, they made it and they waited 10 years, so I can also wait 1 year. So I choose my role models or my heroes, just depending on whom I need.
So I guess it's a good option and good point in time to open up the discussion, to ask you guys to send in questions. We still have a few minutes left. I'm sure that the panelists are also, as am I, interested in which questions maybe we haven't discussed yet or that you're interested in. I will check my phone for a second just to see if anything has come in already. See, but my mom has written me also, asking how it's going. Not a question we will discuss.
Does she have for us?
Not a question we will discuss now, but I'm telling her now it's going well. Maybe start off with a light question from Anonymous to everyone. What are your plans for the summer? Will you be traveling, and how? Timea, any plans for the summer vacation?
Oh yes, we plan to go back to Croatia. This is basically the third time that we gonna spend our holiday in the same spot, because we really did have a very fair negotiation with the owner of the house that if anything happens, so I was the one who negotiated the house, and all the families trusted me that they can rely on me that if anything happens, then I find out have to find a way back home. And so I think that of course we need to be cautious and we need to have all the protections, but on the other hand, I really would like to see that the world is still moving and we cannot really just close up ourselves. So somehow with cautiousness, but yes, we are going on a holiday.
Jochen, any plans for the summer with your role models?
Yes, with the role models, you're right. We have the privilege to have an apartment in the Alps in Tyrol, and also bought a bike with an electro engine, and so we'll be in the Alps and stay in Austria.
There's one question that's directed at Janina, asking what is one thing from your book that everyone needs to understand? And to give a short recap, Janina wrote a book called It's Now, heavily recommended.
That is totally unfair. I mean, I was like putting all of that effort there to write like more than 200 pages. Now you want me to say one thing?
The one most important thing.
I said that already a little bit to your question about role model. I think the most important thing is like try to be bigger than yourself and don't try to take yourself too important. So no hubris and do something that lasts.
We have one question which I feel is relevant, and I would pose it to you, Barbara. It's from my colleague Muammer. Thank you for joining and watching. Why do businesses in the German-speaking region still rely heavily on people with classical studies such as law and business, and ignore philosophy in leadership positions? What are you seeing there?
Well, first of all, I think you would be surprised how many people study at the VIU Executive Academy with exactly those degrees. Yeah. So when you look at the student population, only 30% have a business degree as a first degree. Everybody else has something different. And you could not think of anything that's not represented there. Yeah. So we have people from arts history, from life sciences, veterinarians, whatever you can think of. And I think that's the beauty of our environment, bringing people from diverse walks of life into one classroom, make sure that they get a lot of chance to exchange and grow together. So, yeah, I would not agree with you.
That's good. As I said, hopefully a little bit of controversy. Janina, are you seeing more philosophers in the boardrooms?
No, unfortunately not. And I think the Anglo-Saxons are a little bit more open. But I think the one thing is like, what did you do for your bachelor or for your master's? And then it's like, which way are you going to train? And I believe the good thing is there will be less and less with the skills that we need. And so I think employers will become more open to say, we hire people like consulting companies, they do, right? I mean, there's a test, and if you pass the assessment, it didn't really matter what you studied. It only matters that they see that you have the learning capability, and then they will say, it's like, we will train you. And I think more and more other companies will do that. What you need in order to get that, like to make out of a philosopher or a historic person, someone who studied history, I don't know what the English word for that is, to understand like a balance sheet and all of it. So you need to have the infrastructure and the time to actually teach people in the first years what they need to know. So I think it will be more open once the shortage of skilled people will become bigger.
We have another question which I think maybe might spark a little of controversy. Who knows? It's from Anna. What are some of the ways to add more diversity to executive boards? Are quotas a way, Jochen? It's an old discussion that's coming in a new dress to us. Quotas at Kapsch, is that an idea?
Quotas? Always a difficult question. My opinion is that...
Or maybe quotas is one part of the question. Diversity in boards is the overall overarching theme.
But quotas is always a tough one. My opinion is... finally, we succeed if it's not necessary to talk about diversity anymore. Yeah? It should be just normal. That's what we're trying to live, regardless of religion, race, whatever. Yeah? We do not make any difference. At least we try to be role models within the company. So I'm not a friend of quotas, because quotas could be also counterproductive a little bit, to be a quota person. But the clear goal of us, and that's what we're trying to live, is, even though we're trying, of course, to bring in the balance and do everything, but the goal is not to talk about this, to live it, and therefore we don't have quotas here.
I have to ask the question to Janina as well, who was part of a cover by German magazine Stern with the headline, Ich bin eine Quotenfrau. Janina,
and I'm shaking my head.
Quotas.
So far, it was an intrinsic quota of men to take on 90% of all of the positions that were given. I would really recommend to read some studies of Rosabeth Maskanter, who is a professor of sociology in Harvard, to understand how people choices are taken. they are not taking back qualifications. And very often jobs are given to people because they know someone, because of the networks, because they are known, because they have proved to the decision maker. So the world is running by quota. And the second thing is, like, a quota in the mathematical definition is to be a part of something. So we are all quota of something. So I am, as you can hear, in a strong favor for that. Again here, because I'm repeating myself, because otherwise the privilege is not given. In those countries that have shown, like Norway for a long time, that was a quota was introduced. And again here, qualification and quota is not something that doesn't really fit together. No company became bankrupt, it was better, and all of the research of the last 2 decades have shown that diverse teams are better. So for me, honestly, someone who doesn't want to put it there, and because things are not moving, this is the only way why we're discussing a quota, does not want to believe in research. And then I'm only saying, well, if you would not believe in the research of some other topics either, then we would have a different disaster. So on that, I am pretty strong. And by the way, I'm also outspoken strong about it, because we are not moving. It is not only about gender quota, it's about representation of whomever we have in the society. And as I know that you're sitting in Vienna, if you look at the Vienna population, and maybe today it's a little bit different, how many people you have with different backgrounds and how few of them are represented in the Austrian top companies or in top positions of the Austrian organizations of politics and all of that. I think it shows, and by the way, Germany is no better, right? So it's not about Austria. I think it very definitely shows that it's not about qualification, it's about networks.
Just to give a short comment.
Sure.
We fully support, and I underline fully, diversity. It's just an opinion of myself that a fixed quota from top down isn't the solution for it. Yeah.
We have.
Can I just add to that? Yeah, I fully agree with you, Jochen, to say, diversity is that we should not be having those conversations anymore. And one of the reasons is I have a daughter and a son, and I want equal opportunities for both of them.
Same for me. I also have a daughter and a son. Yeah.
Yeah. So still, I believe to a certain extent quotas, and I'm aligned with you, Janina, in saying we need not only gender quotas but probably other ones. I think they are the entry ticket to a certain position, and you don't get there if you don't have those rules and regulations. And then you have to prove anyway. But if we don't have them in certain areas, I think we're moving too slow. I can say that from the university where I've spent most of my professional life, if there were not for any of those quotas and specific support mechanisms for females in that business, we would not have been anywhere, because the system is conservative.
And if I can add to that, and recently I went into a panel discussion, and just suddenly I requested the HR colleagues to really give me a statistics of my own department, because somehow within the once you are looking for a new employee, you are not really, or at least I'm not considering whether it's a male or female position. It's a position, and you really make a decision about the capabilities and not about the gender, and not about the age, or not about any kind of. And if it really we have a 49-51% share of the gender distribution, so this is quite a diverse team, and also from age perspective. And if I look back, we doubled the EBITDA within these 5 years. So this is when we talk about, or when we read these kind of articles that why the diverse team is important, then it really does have a financial effect at the end of the day. It's not about that you feel much better at the workplace because of the diverse team, and you always have something to talk about, and different inputs really create value at the end of the day, but really you can measure it.
But the issue is a little less accentuated in Eastern Europe, isn't it? We have female participation at higher levels in management positions in Eastern Europe. It fades out towards the very top. But if you look at middle management compared to Austria, Switzerland, Germany, it's an improved picture at least.
Right.
Not saying it's perfect, but
okay.
Better.
Then I'm glad. No, I am not glad about the Austrian figures.
As I'm in the minority a little bit in this discussion, let me again rephrase it. I fully agree, and I underline that diversity is a factor to be more successful. Yeah, I'm not saying anything against it. I'm just saying the quote. I don't think that the quota is the right solution. Just to give you an example, more than 90% by nature in our company have a technological background. I mean, we're an IT company. Yeah, and at the moment we are searching for more than 100 people in Austria. Yeah, but if you look at the applications and even at the output from the education system in Austria, we don't have that much STEAM, let's say, graduates, yeah, to fulfill any kind of quota. Yeah, we really try to increase it. Yeah, we do everything to increase it, but it's even tough to get the right people. We have a war for talents, it would be great, and we'd do everything to support and to balance it. Yeah, and I fully agree everything you said. I just said I can wish a 50% female quote, but it's impossible to fulfill it, at least in Austria, in the tech sector.
Jochen, the quota discussion is usually never about the entire workforce. Quota discussions are usually about certain positions and mostly leadership positions. And we are speaking here about a handful of people in every organization.
And I'm speaking about my whole...
And so only because 10% are only graduating, that doesn't mean that you cannot have like 30% in your top position. You said there's 2 of you. I mean, I don't know who your other colleague is at the top of an organization, but I think with a worldwide approach, is the other person a man?
It is a man in the board and in the management
team. And the only thing
team.
that I want to say is, like, if you open it up for the entire space, you would have found a woman with the technical skills that you're requiring for, or a person with a handicap or with a disability, if you had been broadening up your horizon. That's just what I want to say, because I'm a little bit, as you can see, as you can also hear, I'm a little bit tired of the discussions that not so many people are not graduating. You're absolutely right. And of course, the first thing that I would suggest is like to bring more females into the STEM education, which is much better in Eastern Europe, much better in Spain than in those traditional DACH countries. But what I really want to argue about is, like, if you go into absolute numbers and we speak about quota, we speak about single positions with a worldwide scope of running international business. And you cannot tell me that the entire world would not have been representing or finding a woman that could replace you. Because you would always find another person that could replace me. It's possible. It's only about looking into a different spectrum. And one thing, because that belief, sometimes I start the discussion with a homework, and that's maybe because of so much homeschooling that I did over the last 1.5 years. I'm always giving a homework which lasts 15 minutes, and that's the unconscious bias test on the Harvard business side. It's called implicit association test. And it measures the bias that you're having. And there has not been a single person in the world that went out there with not having a bias. And if you know that you have a bias, you also know that you're not looking at people and evaluating them with the right approach. It depends on who they are. So sorry for being so strong, and we could go on for that. And Klaus most probably gives me like a bad look already that I should finally, be quiet. But this is really coming to my point, and I have heard those arguments for 20 years, and I have seen so many decisions being taken that I really want to bring a little bit of a different perspective into that discussion.
Last comment
I
on
wish
this.
for controversy. Now I have to cut it off
Wait.
because of time restraints.
Yeah, but last content on this.
Very short.
Very short. We have a very diverse and mixed management team. It's simple to reduce this discussion on a management level. I fully agree, even on quotas on a management level, but my point of view is on the whole organization. And concerning the whole organization, let's say there's some issues that we talked, statements and so on, but I see it more in a holistic point of view. Agree, if we just reduce it to the management and top-down point of view, it's not a contradiction.
As I said, if there is the idea to continue the discussion offline, please, I'm happy to share contact details with everyone. We're at the end of a full afternoon. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you everyone for the questions. Thank you guys for your experiences and perspectives. And this is obviously not something we agreed on, but since this is not my or our event, I would like to ask you, Barbara, for the closing words of today, to the alumni who are watching, to the graduates we are celebrating today. Maybe a piece of advice to them, maybe something you want to share with them, putting you on the spot here, but that's what we do.
Yeah, very simple. I would like to thank you all for joining us today for a great event. It has been a great pleasure to reconnect. I think this is what the VIU Executive Academy is all about, connecting, reconnecting even after 10 and 15 years. And I think you have set the bar and the standard high for the ones who are coming in next year for 10 and 15 years in terms of your attendance. And I hope to see you all at some point in time in a 3D version again on campus or wherever at one of our reunions. Thank you very much for joining. And thanks to the panelists for providing the time to spend an afternoon with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us here.